You ready? Let's go. 2-minute daily devo for Thursday, March 31st. I'm in the Contemporary English Version today, and our verse of the day comes from the book of Psalms, chapter 40, verses 1 and 2. Little context here before we get to the verses of the day. This is another psalm that was written by David. But unlike some of his psalms that are just about worshiping God, and you can tell there's a happy tone, a joyful tone as he's talking about how amazing our God is, this psalm takes on another sense. And there's a sense and a feeling of desperation in this psalm. You know, verse 1, and this is our verses of the day, says this: I patiently waited, Lord, for you to hear my prayer, and you listened and pulled me from a lonely pit full of mud and mire. You let me stand on a rock with my feet firm. You see here, you can sense that David is in a bad way right now, that he's in a place right now where he feels like he's in a pit. He's in a pit that's full of mud and mire, and he says it's a lonely pit. You know, I don't know about you, but I've been in this situation before where I feel so desperate. I feel so lonely. I feel like I am stuck in a pit that I cannot get out of. I've walked the floor at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning just calling out and crying out to God, saying, God, please help me. And that's exactly what David does. If you read through the psalm, he talks about how amazing God is and how God is always there to answer his prayer. But there's a common theme that says, God, hurry and help me. He is in a state of desperation. But here's the thing that David does. He knows who to call out to. He knows that God is going to answer his prayer. Now, I'll be honest with you. It says, I waited patiently. You know, there's times where I have to wait, but it's not patiently. I'm calling out to God, God, where are you? God, are you there? But here's the thing. God always answers. God always comes through. God always is there for his people. And just like David says, you had me stand with my feet firm, that you answered my prayer. You were there for those who trust in you. As you read through, that's what David says over and over again. He's reminding himself of the faithfulness of our God. You know, and sometimes we need to do that. In the middle of the trial that you're going through, you just need to remind yourself, wait a minute. You know, I'm lonely, I'm desperate, I don't know what to do. But you know what? God's never failed me. God has always come through. And you remember the times that God has faithfully answered prayer after prayer after prayer. That's the thing in our lives. If you look back and see how God has answered those prayers time and time again, that's going to build that faith. And that's exactly what happens here with David. He builds that faith up knowing that God has answered him and these desperate calls time and time again. I want to encourage you today. You might be in the middle of some situation that you feel is desperate, that you feel is lonely, and you feel like you're stuck in that pit. And you've called out to God and you're waiting patiently. But let me remind you of this. God is faithful. Let me encourage you. God will be there for his people. God will answer his prayer. God will show up and help you in your time of need. We just need to be reminded to stir yourself up on that thought and that feeling that, hey, this is the God that answers prayer. This is the God that's always there for us. And I want you to encourage yourself like David did, where he encouraged himself knowing that God is going to come through, because I promise you this, God is going to come through. All right, that's it, guys. I'll talk to you tomorrow.